on top of the market, but because it's the Greenwich market, everyone is so attached to it, it didn't go through the first time in planning, and then they went to a legal battle, of which I would all suggest you avoid in your careers, because that will get you nowhere, and you'll spend your entire project budget on legal fees. As much as I love lawyers, it's not the place to be for a construction contract. So this one is key. You manage your risks at inception. So we knew that if we didn't go through planning at that point in time, that would be a very big risk. We developed a risk register, and I'll show you that as you go through. And you make sure that you're fully aware of the complications of your project. Every month you update it at every point of the way. And the last one, facilitate the occupation of the building. Well, you're now yet to judge me on how that works. So you'll move in September, and you'll be able to tell me then and there. I can tell you from the outset there is a period of seasonal commissioning, so it will not be absolutely perfect for the first year. The heating, the lighting, you name it. Plus there will be a whole raft of new audio-visual systems in there, so you'll be able to tell the savvy lecturer from the non-savvy lecturer, because they'll be learning as they go along. And it depends on how much training they attend prior to starting to lecture to you guys. So, you'll be able to gauge how well this change has been taken up by the university and how well they do see it as a soft landing, or whether they feel like they've crash landed. But by all means, ask them, and you can feel around for yourself.
We're 5 years, isn't we?
Of course, you're going to come back and have a look at me.
Yeah.
I mean, and they'll be in a fishbowl, so you'll be able to see them all through the glass facade. So.
Who was the designer?
The architects, Hennigan Peng. They last year's shortlisted Sterling Prize Award nominees for the Giants Causeway building in Ireland. When we took them on, they were pretty well unknown. They won the Young European Architect of the Year award when we took them on, and it went on the risk register because it was a risk. They're a young, vibrant practice, and since then they are doing a museum in Palestine at the moment. They've taken some tricky jobs. They're doing the Cairo Egyptian Museum on the pyramids. So they're starting to move their way. So the two-stage tender, let me touch on that, because this is how you describe the design development phase moving forward. We decided that because of the risk of the site, we would develop an enabling works package, so that because most of your money is spent in construction going underground, particularly because we had a World War II bomb on the site, we were unsure. So we spent a lot of time in investigations in and around the site, probably 3 times the amount of site investigations than any normal developer might just do on a piece of land that they're looking to build on.
Did that come towards an extension of time, sorry?
Hey?
Did that come towards an extension of time?
No, because guess what we did? We put 2 packages. We did one as the main contract, which is building up, and one as the enabling works going down.
Right.
So we put you have to do a OJU tender. It's a procurement thing in a university or a big institution like this, because the money is over a certain amount of money. Any contractor around the world should be able to bid for it, so you have to open up the process. So we had, I kid you not, kind of returns from contractors about this high, and we sifted through them for a good few days. Selected our preferred group, shortlisted contractors, brought them in for interviews, and then developed and went to pick a contractor from there. What did we do? We said that we would, yes, we'll engage you for the enabling contract, but we will not agree directly to engage you for the main works. You prove yourself on the enabling works with dangling the carrot for the main works in front of them. Yeah? Guess what finished on program and under budget? The enabling works. Almost unheard of. But when you have a carrot that you're dangling of a £38 million contract and you're doing a £4 million contract to test them out, they were hugely successful. Osborne delivered it on time, minimal fuss. They were fantastic with the neighbours, even digging out 5 metre thick concrete walls, and they excelled. So instead of going and opening it up to a wider tender, we then negotiated a fair and even contract and got a value for money deal based on what our quantity surveyor advised us. So we then engaged them in the main contract works, which was the 38 million, and then we proceeded to build up. Yeah. So in terms of the site survey, we did all of that before we even engaged Osborne. So we have a structural engineer. You can hire main little contractors as you go around. They develop knowledge of the plan. So we have about 65 groups of consultants, land remediation consultants, site surveyors, you name it, and we just carried those same project consultants through from university direct engagement through to information for the contractor, through to university direct engagement again at the end of the job. So it's easy. You have that continuity, which is also quite important. And so while we were doing the enabling works, the design started to develop over the top, so that year we spent in planning, they were doing site surveying works and elements. We weren't allowed to start piling on site until we had received planning permission. But the minute we had received planning permission, we started the next week because we were ready and prepared for it. So we started piling on site while we were still developing the design, and the legals for a planning permission actually take about 3 to 4 months because you're able to have a court back challenge. So the neighbours could have gone to court and challenged it should they felt that there was something in the process that was undue. And we had to sort of hold those 4 months out because you don't want to invest a huge great deal of money in the new building moving forward if there was some sort of legal process that had to be dealt with. Yep, we had 8 weeks of agreed archaeological digging with English Heritage, and there is a reason why it's called Stockholm Street. There are wells in there and in and around the area. So we found, I think we thought we had 2 wells and we found about 6. So yeah, that's pretty good going. That was excellent. This pretty much scrapes off the top layer, and then you can see some of the walls and early formations of a village area developed. Because the church was across the road, that village had been there for quite a long time. Yeah. That makes sense. So, gosh, this is just some of the requirements in executing a construction project. I won't run through all of them. Procurement I mentioned in getting everything on board. Actually, for the university, the contract that we agreed with Osborne was that we had to have 3 prices for every package. So we had 30 provisional sum packages in the building, and that they then had to achieve 3 subcontractor prices because our procurement laws require us to have 3 examples of the price so that we know we're getting a fair and even result. So this meant that there was quite a bit of detail. So the contractor couldn't just say, oh look, that's the price you have to pay. This is what we think is fair and reasonable, go for it. They knew when they signed up to it that they had to achieve 3 prices for absolutely everything that they wished to undertake. To date, that they have achieved that.
You actually have full-time lawyers sitting in college.
I try to spend as little amount on legal fees as absolutely possible because it's expensive. We've only used our lawyers to date for land transfers, which is what we need. Probably no more than a day's advice. Our project manager, our external project manager is in contact with them, and what we do is if we're unsure about a situation like the claim, then we ask them and they give us another day's advice on that. So I try to keep it as little as possible.
It sounds like a very complicated contract.
Yeah, the lawyers wrote the contract. So they did do the contract based on our brief, our descriptions and our requirements.
So you put Network Rail first, I know you mentioned them earlier, were they the biggest obstacle you found?
No.
And what was there? Did they have an objection or?
Well, when we first bought the piece of land, they thought they owned the footpath that you'll see as we evolve. So there was a bit of a negotiation. And for the first 6 months, nobody replied to our phone calls, nobody answered our emails. We didn't even know, we didn't hear from any of them. Our structural engineers had a very good relationship with them on a previous project, and they managed to find a loophole through. So our structural engineer spoke to someone in Network Rail, and we used our contact to get to one of their contacts to even get somebody to look at our project. Then they came back to us and said, oh, we own that piece of land, you can't build on that. And we said, oh, no. Yeah, then we spent a day on the lawyers to do that. And then they realised, oh, well, we want a covenant on your land because if the network was to fail, we would like to use your land to gain access to our track. Then we can sit down at the table and agree and negotiate. So the walkway that you have called University Way that runs up the side of the building is a Network Rail covenant area on our land. And then we started the enabling work. So I said we had 2 programs, 2 separate contracts, 2 completely different projects. One will run coincidentally on the top of the other. So whilst we're on site doing the enabling works, we're also design developing and starting up and making sure we're in contact with all the user groups. So I must say, this year will be busy. I think the first couple of years were extremely busy getting everybody understanding, because also it's very hard to grasp for certain people that they're focused on their teaching this year, their students this year, and actually this is not for 5 years' time, so they'll think, oh, well, I'll deal with it later. You know, you have to get their buy-in now, because actually decisions had to be made very early on that couldn't have waited. These were the areas that we made flexible. So actually the studio space could be converted into a dance area. So actually what we did when we lost some space in the building, we also made the spaces very flexible. They're predominantly floor boxes, large open voids, large floor plates where the central core of the building is the structural core, so that we end up with the ability in the future, should the university wish to change it completely, they have the ability to do so. So not only while we were building a design for building a building for a fit purpose, we were also very conscious in our mind that sustainability, flexibility and key future-proofing solutions all needed to be included into the building to make sure it had a longevity far beyond me and probably yourselves and the next students that go into it. So yeah, flexible was essential. You can see this is where we started on the site, and this has taken a number of months into last year.
Sorry, there was one thing I was going to say is, like you said about the archaeology, different things like that, they're all on your risk register,
Yep.
but they're the early things that they've all seen and taken their place now and had their day, so you've kind of got past those.
Yeah.
Is there any of the risks that are still got to be overcome? Because our project is more of the handing
Yeah.
over, so that's, if there's any that you'd be able to tell us about on that, because that's we try to build in the risk factors for the actual handover and migrating people from one university to the other.
A risk never comes off a risk register
Yeah.
unless it's not a risk anymore. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you give it 2 green lights on your risk register,
Yeah.
and then you know that you can either, because in every risk, your contingency should be based on how you foresee mitigating that risk. So your risk register should have a cost allocated next to that risk. So say for instance, something that's realistic, if they're digging down and we're connecting to the Thames water drains, the risk of flooding is high. How could we mitigate it? What steps do we obviously put in place now? You work through that. And then if there was an unforeseeable event, what's it likely to cost to rectify it, to get the contractor continually moving, albeit we may then have to deal with a bit of a delay and a bit more cost. So that cost of that risk goes into your program. You also factor in to that cost the delay. So if there was a flood, for instance, how long would it take them to rectify it if it was moderately bad or very bad, and you assess it? You always assume very bad. So if it was a bad risk and a bad flood, how long would it take in program time to deliver that? You add that cost into the cost of that risk, then the rectification costs go on top of that.
Did you actually put the full cost into your risk register, or did you do a probability?
You do a calculation and a probability, but based on where you are on an annual decision-making process. So you know, and if you update it every month, you should be able to absolutely see where your risks lie and how much they should cost you.
Or we have that in places and something?
And you never tell the contractor, right? You know, the contractor doesn't know what costs we have allocated to our risk. So you know how I can say to you right now, and yes, we're videotaping this, so don't show the contractor until we finish the job, please. But we've allocated that there would be some delays in our costs, and we know that on our risk register, and we have a contingency allocation for it, and therefore we're still on budget. Now, if they were to get there 27 weeks, that would be a far different problem, because we certainly didn't anticipate that. But based on what we know and where we are and how we could manage the situation, we've anticipated some delays.
Yeah. Obviously, you can't say some things because of if they haven't finished, you can't say them. But is there any obvious ones, like any planning? You probably have some planning conditions that might be outstanding or something, or from the what you call the area that's protected.
World Heritage Site?
World Heritage Site. If they haven't signed something off, is there any of those sort of things that you would be able to say, so that we've got something to include in our?
You want me to answer your assignment for you? Well, I'm trying to avoid that. You can clearly see this. What I would say is that when you get given planning permission, you get given a series of conditions. This building has, I think, 36 conditions.
Yeah.
And in those 36 conditions, guess what you do to achieve that sign-off so that it doesn't become a risk?
It has to be discharged.
Yeah, so what do?
You,
You get given 36 conditions before you even start going up in the building. What do you do with those conditions?
Research them, look into them, what you can do to get around them in the cheapest, effective way.
Right, how would you do that?
I look at the risk.
Thereabouts. We have a planning consultant on board
Yeah.
who helps us go through the planning process. So how, if you were given 36 situations on your desk that you say, right, I have 36 conditions I need to sign off, going back to the organisational structure, how do I then mitigate my risk of not getting those 36 signed off?
You want to come out to the contractor.
You are?
on the same case with like people, but if the risk is, yeah, with like wildlife or whatever,
Yeah.
but environmentalists or whatever, you engage them and you use their expertise to mitigate the risk.
Negotiate.
So well, one of them was a biodiversity plan. So we needed to prove a biodiversity plan for the building and have it signed off as a condition discharge, also with a maintenance report on how we would use the rooms. So you put together a tracker, planning tracker, you list out your 36 conditions, you assign a condition to those who have the roles and responsibilities for it. So we already have a biodiversity consultant on board. You assign through your landscape architect, that's their responsibility, with you signing it off as a university, don't you? So then you give them the planning condition, and then you work towards it. Of course, as a client, they can't sign off your planning condition until you tell them what you're putting on the roofs. So guess where it falls? You have a tracker and you have a program, and you make sure you achieve it, and you set out your dates, and you do not slip. That's it.
So it's like handing over the risk.
You share it. You don't ever absolve it because you're responsible for everything. Because you see where you sit at the top of that tree. You cannot ever turn around and say, well, he said, forget it, you've failed. It is your responsibility to make sure people are clear, they have a good understanding, they know what their roles and responsibilities are, and that you're continually updating. That should apply across the board. Yeah? You've answered your own question in a roundabout way. So, again, I said to you, we use the REBA stage guidelines. So when you talk about those user groups, you talk about how we structured it so that they understood. Because they're not architects, they're librarians, they're digital studio lab technicians, they are academic lecturers. They aren't interested in your REBA stage guidelines, but you need to give them a clear brief that this is how we're working to it, and when does their desk and furniture and chair sign off fit into it. Well, of course, you clearly show them that, yeah? And when we've gone through a tender package, of which we've just recently done, we have had mock-up rooms made so that everybody can come in and test their chairs. And then to move into the final mock-up sign-off, we actually bring the mock-up room down here to where the staff work, and then they go and test one of 4 chairs. You give them options, you give them the ability, and then you design around their parameters. Yeah. I spoke to you about 65 groups of consultants. This is just a few to list. But you have your project is design-led by the architects. This doesn't always happen in a design build. The contractor is more of the lead. But in this situation, Henning and Peng are our design-led architects. Our project managers and quantity surveyors are Fanshawe. Structural engineers are Baxter and Associates. Services and sustainability consultant, Paul Lee. Planning consultant, I mentioned, Jarvis Jones Deloitte, now just Deloitte. And construction design management, PFB. CDM is really quite important the whole way through the process because you shouldn't be designing anything into the building that my facilities manager, who you will meet in the future, is not able to manage, maintain, or keep within her control. So actually, you've got your eye on the ball, yeah, you want to get the building up, but everything and every decision that you make, they should be aware of. So for CDM, what's the best way of managing how you're making decisions about the facilities? Get the facilities managers on board. Get them to make the decisions.
Were they all mandated?
No, they are all directly employed by the University of Greenwich to act as our consultants.
So the contractors have their own designers as well?
Correct, they have their own design team, so we kept it very clear, very, very clear. So again, back to that structure, you see the contractor was over this side and all of their subcontractors were below it, albeit, I would say that there's never an us and them attitude. You've got to be clear that you're working. That I would not want my site manager's job. I find mine hard enough. But actually building the building to these guys' specification with all of these services and having these guys on your back all the time, he has got it really hard. And I must say, there is a design realisation workshop we're doing next Friday, and he will be coming to lecture to the students. Because I think if you're going to go out into the world of construction as an architect, particularly my background, you really need to see that you have to work with these guys. Albeit that, you can say, the damn contractor put in a claim. They're totally entitled to it. They feel that that's their position. You let them do that. That's their job, that's their role. But equally, my job and my role is to make sure we don't allow that slippage. So they're doing their job, I'm doing my job. I wouldn't be able, he has the most incredibly tough job, especially when they're tight up against a really late program. They're pushing it, they've got the quality. Something has to slip, right? Your golden triangle, time, cost, quality. You don't want them to slip on quality. Cost, they can't budge on because the delay can push them out. So it's a tough position they're in. But to this day, we all get along very well. And I'm sure that will be the case tomorrow. And again,
into constructing excellence as well.
they are a considerate contractor, and they are involved quite heavily in the CIOB. So we've also done joint lectures with them to the CIOB, and it's also about avoiding the us and them attitude all the time and making sure that everybody does still enjoy their job. They're doing exactly what I'm doing on this side. They're doing their best to achieve what they've been set out to do, and I'm doing my best to achieve what we've been set out to do. And actually they should come together quite well. And if you don't have a good relationship, I would say that's your biggest downfall. Okay, you might not personally have to like the person, or vice versa. You might like the person personally, but they're very tough at what they do. Then you should respect their job for that. And this is also an interesting way forward in the future of the construction industry, because these kind of contracts are very interesting in that it's a traditional contract, whereas a lot of stuff is design and build, where there is clearly a different way of managing the situation. So I would say that to date, Osborne have been excellent with the university, and we still have a very good relationship with them, albeit that we understand they're late. So our fit-out program is now dovetailing under them with their cooperation to try and make sure that we can still achieve that September deadline, because they know that that's our absolute.
So your fit-out program is separate to the construction? Because
Why?
Osborne's not doing the fit-out, aren't they?
Not entirely.
Not entirely. So, although there's due to finish sometime very soon,
Mid-July.
you've then got to get on other contractors to do the actual fit out of that.
Right.
So for our assignment, where I was trying to get the sort of trophy for answers, that's where our risk is.
Yeah.
Is for our assignment is your fit out contractors.
So what are the risks?
That they can't get in there on time, and that then they put in perhaps extra costs and stuff, or that they will their program will be pushed forward.
Yeah.
Or if you've got specialist equipment that's coming from far away, then it's not regular stuff, is it?
Actually, I don't know. If it's no, we know
Don't know.
that some people that we've been fit at.
How would you mitigate that?
Pretty awful.
You could give some of it to Osborne. Yeah, we're negotiating that at the moment. We're negotiating the fit out of a couple of things with Osborne at the moment because of the delay and because of the timescale that it would take us to do it and how many floors we'd have to potentially rip up. So guess what? While they're lifting the floors now, guess who's going in now? First Fix AD, my contract. Now, it's a bit of a grey area. I wouldn't advise it at all ways because you have to have a good relationship with your contractor, because if my fit-out contractor does something that damages Osborne's work, who's going to say, oh, well, he did that, she did that? So this is a very, very sticky situation. And how would you mitigate that? Have a clear, concise set of roles and responsibilities, put a security guard potentially in the room with them. You've got to think around these problems.
Is that contract placed with you fit out?
Have we placed all the contracts? Yeah. But not until we knew where we were. Because that would be foolish, right? Because then instantly they get a variation from at the time.
So you actually have security guards in work areas, or members of staff in work areas, just observing.
Potentially we're looking at that at the moment, depending on the complication.
Would you say that using vesting certificates is a way of you mitigating the risk. So if he was asking for some specialist equipment and you've got pictures and information of it and it's perhaps in Germany or Japan or something, you know it's actually made and you're going to get it.
Yeah, we did that. We've got the first, UK's first alboponics machine that has come from Sustainable Now Technologies in America, and we coordinated the supply and installation of it with Osborne, and it's currently sitting on the roofs waiting to be unveiled. And technically, yeah, there's a fair bit there. So you have to think around all of the factors that might come up to that particular problem, and then that's how you start working out what you need to be doing.
So, do you have like a whole team that does the British?
Do I have a whole team?
Yes, but then is it made up of different contractors like the audiovisual?
Yeah, because you get the specialists to do their job, right? You don't try and get your joiner to fit out an audio-visual piece of equipment, because that would just be a disaster. Stick to what they know. Get the right people for the right job. Yeah, so we have 12 different fit-out contractors.
So you always just have to be in contact with them now as to when they can come in and what you don't really know yet.
Yeah, and again, you've got to make sure that when you do get to that point of agreeing that line of the contract, you're certain they're able to deliver and they understand the challenges, the parameters, and the roles and responsibilities. So to date, we've been working, we had to follow a formal tender process. So all of the tender packages were done last year. We've run a series of five-stage process in the tender, and that meant from their return of tender submission all the way through to interview and engagement was based on a contractual document, so that they're aware of the challenges they face. They're aware that there are 10 other people, 11 other people other than them, and they're aware of all of that, so that they can't turn around and say, well, I didn't know the scope of works. You're telling me I can't have the lift all to myself. I'm going to charge you because I'm standing around for half a day. So you've got to make sure that you're very clear about these things, and when you do go to sign that piece of paper, that you're very black and white about it.
What's the value of the fit out, is that?
The value of the fit out is about 15 million.
And has it started yet?
Well, no, some of it has.
Right.
Some of it is absolutely under Osborne because there are elements of it that we wouldn't want to do. And then the university portion at the end is probably about 5 million.
And that's all due to be completed mid-July as well.
No, September.
So Osborne, so September is the final day for
Yeah,
fit out.
September the 15th, the build all
You've got
open.
8
Was
weeks,
that PC then?
PC will be in July.
and then you've got
Well,
about
it's
8
not
weeks.
fair.
Yeah, well, not started.
Or you will finish
Finish
sort
it.
of,
Yeah, finish it.
Yeah.
Full swing ahead.
So if you're all looking for a summer job,
In terms of once you've got the actual building, once they've handed over the building, it's all done, are you just going to just basically move all the students in there? Or are you going to actually test? So you're going to have the whole building will be, say, testing for
and you look at,
a month or a couple of weeks?
I mean, okay, so say the building is handed over by Osborne. What for you as a student is your critical element and requirement in that building?
Safety,
Classroom.
safety measures.
Yeah. So when you say safety systems,
Fire alarms.
what else?
Ingress safety.
Yeah, so the fire alarms are installed by Osborne, but making sure the protocols and the processes are in place. Who does all that? FM. Guess what they've just signed off last week? Fire alarm protocols. So that the contractor can install and set up the system exactly how we'll be using it on day one.
Well, that's got to be obviously fully functional for you to get building control built anyway, isn't it? So you have that PC stage anyway, but in terms of actually testing the
But it
actual...
won't. But the contractor can set up the fire alarm at any point. There are a whole raft of detailed solutions that you can have the fire alarm system. So the process is, if a sprinkler head goes off, it will activate the fire alarm direct. If a fire alarm call point is pushed, it will activate the fire alarm direct. If a smoke detector goes off, you're smoking in the toilet. What's going to happen? I want the fire brigade there. There's a knock system, so you have a 1 minute response time. The facilities management department have set that up. You have a 4-minute lead time, and then it will automatically go off if you don't call back to say, actually, there's some guy in the bathroom smoking, I've mitigated it, don't call the fire brigade. Because you know you only get 10 calls per year now, and then they charge you for everyone outside of that. So guess what goes into your FM budget? Yeah? Call out to the fire brigade. So see how, yeah, you can just say, yeah, switch the fire alarm system on. It doesn't work like that. Our FM department have to make the decision that this is the process and health and safety regulation that the university follow. And that needs to be tied in to the building. And that's what you get the contractors to do. Because when they set the fire alarm system up, they could just set it up any way they like. And then they can still sign off the building code. Yeah, this meets building control requirements, we've signed it. But the university will then turn up on day one and go, that's not how our fire alarm system works. So what do? You make them do it beforehand, so that you do it once, and you do it once only. Okay. I'll run through the plans. Basically, the building is basement, ground, first, second, and third. As you go higher up the building, there's less of it at the back here, but pretty much the entire building has all of the plant room and equipment spaces in the basement. So you've got server rooms, boiler rooms, air handling units, pretty much to cool and ventilate the whole building. It's a mixed mode ventilation system, rather complex, which means it's a mixture of not just air conditioning, there are elements of air conditioning in higher density spaces, particularly with computers, and then there's natural ventilation pretty much in other areas throughout. You'll get a feel for it for day one, and you'll know, you'll tell me, or when you go and visit the building as a user or a public person, you'll understand. There's an archive space in the basement, the 2 lecture theatres, some digital TV studios and editing suites, and photography room and a tech workshop in the basement. So all the dark spaces are pretty much gone in the basement. As you go to the ground floor, the building splits in 2. You've got a large courtyard canyon in here, and you've got academic side here and a library here. Pretty much just the library the whole way up with some pretty much open ground floor down here. So it's just a huge, vast open floor space. And then as you go on the academic side, there's model workshops and some retail spaces at the front, because part of our planning requirement, so we had to have a conditional sign-off, that was we had to have an active street front. So we have a cafe, a gallery, the art shop, and a marketing suite effectively for the university for recruitment. When did that happen? Very early on in the process. Who got assigned that job? The architect. How did it get discharged? You submit the plans to the planners. As you go up the building, the library has a whole series of shelving, and you've got the academic architecture studio floor space. Further up, you can start to see the building come into play. It starts to pull back, so this is the rear facade. You've got a series of seminar rooms and staff offices, you can see over there, much to their delight, and some group study seminar rooms. The third floor, very similar again, but you can see the building pulls back even further. So this is where we were before, and it steps in quite nicely. So that we're coming away from the residential area, but still being very academic on the front scale of the building. The roofs. So if you think you're going to go through a project over a 5-year period, over a 2-year period, over a 1-year period, and not have any scope creep, think again. This is scope creep. This is scope creep at its best. The landscape roofs, as you'll see on the animation, were shown as grass on a roof at planning stage. We then took this and had a biodiversity requirement to fulfil as part of the planning requirements, and we showed the planners that we potentially could use our Landscape School of Architecture as a user group to develop and design up the roofs. Guess what happens? The Landscape School of Architecture get on board, yep, we're going to design the roofs, fantastic. They come up with a scheme, £1.5 million. What do you have in the budget for the landscape roof? About £400,000. There's a bit of a gap, yeah? So, how do you then, what do you do?
Yeah.
What's everyone's favourite word? Cost cutting, value engineering? Value engineering. And what's the purpose of value engineering?
Maintain the standard but get the cost down.
Excellent. So, the landscape school came up with 14 different landscape roofs.